on topic, but
It
I'll
was
just
just interesting you brought it up as I'm sitting here using somebody's dull knives to cut these chops up.
you know what? I hope them dull knives don't cut through them chops, and you cannot eat them,
You
and you
know,
have to give
don't
them
you know
to
what? Don't be a
Sean
hater all
and
your life.
yeah.
Don't be a hater. I literally supported one of your Nigerian brothers by going to one of their very well established black restaurant slash club slash bar hybrid locations today or last night. And you gonna sit there and say that? You know what? I'm not even rooting for everybody black no more. You ruined it. It's over.
Well, they
It's
not black
over.
in it.
Y'all
Make
weren't rooting for everybody
America
black.
great,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, that's right.
America great, maybe. I mean, America's already doing what America does, but hey, it is what it is, and it was what it was. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to another episode of Everyday Black Man Podcast, a podcast on authentic black male thoughts. You have your boy Riker, you have Reed,
Read.
Sham,
Damn.
Libertarian's not here, White Collar Sugar, Stylish. Um, and also today we are joined by a special guest, Dominic, who's going to talk to us about leadership, about moving up in our lives, and a number of other different things. But I don't want to mess it up. Dominic, please introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here again. My name is Dominic George, and I am a leadership coach for specifically black men who are looking to elevate their career, go from anywhere from mid-level management or leadership to senior level leadership roles. And I help coach you through that without losing yourself in the process.
Awesome. I mean, that's definitely something that myself and White
Oh,
Collar
he
Sugar.
triggered me. He triggered me right now. Hold on, look. Because I see I'm not losing myself, but the inner nigga in me just my eye twitching a lot, man. They gave me twice as many white folks as I'm used to being in charge of, and god damn it, boy, if I tell you they use every mental health fucking excuse to why they suck at being a good person. Oh God. Riker, give him my personal information. We're gonna have to follow up after this. No.
I mean, yeah, we definitely are, and that's partly why I wanted to have Dominic on. When I saw his initial kind of message over to us, I was like, yeah, this is something we definitely need more of because oftentimes people don't dream high enough. And I mean, we joke around a lot, but your career is not a joke. Like you got to take that very seriously. And black people, I find oftentimes we don't make the right moves. Like I'm in charge of what you would consider an at a company, when all that means is a bunch of black folks try to get together to see if we can get a little more of the company pie for us to do events geared towards black folks. But being honest and straightforward and authentic, what does authentic leadership look like for black men navigating the corporate spaces that weren't built with them in mind, Dominic?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Most of these elevated positions, most of the tracks that are available to others are not often positioned for black people, especially black men in leadership. And I would say that the opportunity is still available, but it does take a certain direction, and it's a little challenging to navigate it without the proper guidance, without the someone telling you where the pitfalls are, where the sort of landmines are, and it's always helpful to have somebody guiding you in that direction. I think, in my experience, people often try to emulate someone in a different seat who doesn't look like them and often end up losing themselves in the process to get to that elevated role, whether it's executive, whether it's a VP, a chief role, whatever the senior leadership opportunity that you're looking for. It's often held by somebody who doesn't look like you, and you're trying to navigate that space with lessons that don't always apply. And so when I think about authentic leadership, I'm thinking about what does it mean to truly be yourself in each room that you walk into and still lead with authority, lead with presence, something that I call your authentic edge. And it always helps to have guidance in that process.
So what's funny is I personally tell folks about how I never had an answer for when people would say, what are your goals?"
Mhm.
Until probably, 5 years ago, when I broke into corporate America and started to do well. And that's when, through asking questions, because one thing that I think outside of people like yourself, we don't ever think that, understand the value of a mentor or asking questions to somebody that's willing to share. certain answers. I legitimately only told people like I didn't have any because I feel like I've already made it to a certain spot, from wanted to get out of Chicago. So I joined the Air Force. Okay, I made it. I'm in the Air Force. What's the next one? I don't want to get kicked out of the Air Force. Don't get kicked out of the Air Force. I want to make rank. But there was like very short end goals. And me specifically, as somebody that at that time wanted to succeed and figure things out, I didn't know how to. And like
Mhm.
you get intimidated by folks that may look like you. Actually, it ain't even the folks that didn't look like me. It was the people that did look like me that I got intimidated by because I didn't know if they were willing or felt like they were willing to share if not a roadmap, but like just some breadcrumbs as to how I can get to a similar position as them or a path, whichever career. You might not be direct competition, but it was just like there was a lot of gatekeeping amongst Black people.
Yeah, and I've certainly experienced that as well in many of my roles, which is why I decided, actually, I experienced it a little bit too much, which is why I decided if there's going to be a solution, someone has to create it. And I just decided that given my success, given my ability to navigate certain spaces rather quickly, I wanted to be that person who would be that bridge, be that person who was guiding others along their journey. Because you're right, it can be intimidating, it can be isolating, especially as you navigate higher into the C-suite or above or whatever that senior level leadership role is. Oftentimes, it's people are operating in fear. They're protecting their own space, thinking that it's not an abundant amount of resources for everybody else. And so sometimes you're operating in this survival mechanism as you elevate the ladder towards leadership. But I wanted to be that person that offered that bridge along the way.
Personally, think that's admirable. Like it's cool to hear that we got folks that look like us doing that and actually have the perception from inside and outside. Because also you got the scammer culture that telling you how to get somewhere that they've never been.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. I see that, especially on LinkedIn. You get spammed a lot, which sign up for this course and it'll get you to X destination, and then you go through it and then you end up wasting your money. I've certainly been through those processes as well as I was looking for mentors, as I was looking for people to sponsor my journey through leadership, as well as coaches. It wasn't until I landed on my first executive coach, who also happened to be a Black man, that I understood the value and the power of just of relying on somebody who's already been through the process. It just makes it that much easier when you have a helping hand.
Awesome.
Yeah, dope, like real dope. And to do it in a positive manner without having like a negative connotation of flexing in it. Like I'm telling you, when I've seen every form of it, I've seen every form, and it wasn't even I wasn't looking for it. I'm here to help y'all, but I'm gonna show y'all how I got this pool so you can get a pool, but your pool ain't gonna be as nice as my pool. Any kind of shit like, well, what? It's like, okay, well,
Got a question. You ready? You ready? All right, cool. Hey, I'm Reed. The dynamic you spoke of from the beginning is someone who looks like you. I think that matters to an extent, but what about someone who came from the same journey as you? Like, what do you say? Well, what forgot what we call you on this podcast? Oh, white collar spoke of coming from the inner city of Chicago versus someone who looks like you. I would say I'm not trying to be political. Versus someone like Obama. He looked like us,
Mhm.
but his journey was very different from what someone would suffer from, like from the inner city. So, do you talk about that dynamic as well?
Yeah, I could definitely speak to that. Speaking for myself, I'm not going to be relatable to everybody, right? So I grew up in Oakland, California, spent about 30 years there in the inner city, eventually made my way towards a few other cities that I lived in close proximity before moving out to the East Coast in New York City. And that's where I really started to launch my career. And so, just speaking from experience, I was actually working with a lot of people who lived in New York and had a different experience than me because I was from the West Coast. Although we had similar upbringing stories. There were just the destination was different, the interactions were different, and so just speaking from experience, I'm not gonna be the person that's gonna relate to everyone, but I am gonna be the person that gives you the roadmap because I believe that. No matter what your background is, no matter what your story is, there are certain politics that happen within a leadership journey, and those tend to be consistent from industry to industry, whether it's working in government, whether it's working in nonprofit, whether it's in the corporate space. The journey to get to the destination of senior leadership tends to be the same. And what I coach people around is really understanding like what is your authentic edge. You brought up the example of like someone in the inner city from Chicago versus Obama, right? So yes, Obama was very privileged and had all the resources available to him. And I don't know his full life, but just from a distance, it looked like he had all the support to get to where he needed along his journey. And when he made it up higher, that those resources looked even different. Like I don't even know if I could attain similar resources. But what I will say is I coach people to really understand their own leadership DNA within that strategy, right? So there's a strategy to get to senior leadership. And what I coach around is getting really clear about what are your goals. Because if you're not clear on what the goals are in your own career trajectory, you're just going to be lost. And so I coach people around like, how do you get really clear on what that goal is? Because that's going to be your center point, your guiding point to get you where you want to go. And then from there, I really coach around three different M's, right? So there's the mindset, there's mastery, and then there's motivate. When I think about individuals that I'm working with, whether we have a shared background or not, I'm focused on what is your mindset? Like, what is preventing you from getting to where you want to go? Because we all have negative thoughts. We all have things in our mind that tell us we're not good enough. And in my coaching platform, what I coach around is helping people get really clear on eliminating those negative thoughts and putting new thoughts in that adds value to who you are. Because I think once you are able to conquer your mindset, then you can move towards mastery of the external skills that most people hear about, right? Which is the executive presence, the soft skills that it takes to navigate certain leadership skills, building a team, running high performing teams, like all those things. You can start to master that once you move past the shift of the mindset that most of us have, depending on who you are and your experience with the workplace. Most of us tend to have a hard shell or a negative experience of the workplace. And so I really help you shift that. And then once you get past that mastery phase of you've conquered the skills, you've understood what it takes to move through a leadership journey, then you can start to motivate others. I often think about, I can't remember who named it on the podcast, but you talked about a mentor. And yes, mentors are great. And I think that they're really important in several different spaces. But I also think coaches are important. I think sponsors are important. Sponsors are individuals who are in your organization, who are your ride or die, who are literally trying to elevate your career when you're not in the room. And I think all of those things are important. But it just takes the knowledge to know how do you get there. And so, yeah, I think mindset is really important as you navigate whether you know the person across from you or not.
Yeah, because the general observation that I've noticed with a lot of people is they feel like they can get in middle management, but that next level, they feel there's a wall there.
Yeah.
I think it was funny you were leading right while I was thinking read where a lot of us before you even get to see what's on the other side of the wall think those people are so much more intelligent or like very smart people when that's not always the case. Like there's a lot of connections and it's that whole it's who you know not what you know thing really is prevalent and how some people build their damn their leadership teams or how people choose their staff.
Yeah, and I think you're Absolutely correct, right? Your network is your most powerful tool to get to where you want to go. And even that, there's a mindset around what do I have available to me and what do I have access to? And most people put limitations on what that is. I often talk about cross department collaboration. I think it's the most valuable tool that most people don't take advantage of. My experience of people in middle management trying to make their way to that senior leadership role is they're often putting their head down, they're focused on their work, and they're not worried about the team member next to them. They're not worried about the department next to them. But those are the individuals in your network who are actually going to elevate your career. And so when I'm talking to early leaders, I'm often telling them to make cross functional, cross departmental relationships in a way that you create a win-win. So it's not about taking from others. It's about really getting clear on who that person is in that other department, who are the decision makers in that other department next to you, even within your own department, getting very clear on like who people are, what they're working on, what are your shared goals, and then how can you help them elevate because they're ultimately going to help you elevate at the same time. And it's really just about getting outside of your own head and creating those networks because we all have access to things. We just have to actually open our mouth, say what we want, and navigate the space accordingly.
Definitely. I mean, you have to navigate, the environment that you're in. But stepping back slightly, in the event, Dominic, that you had to start all the way over again, and you're now an entry level person, how would you build yourself to be able to get back to the position that you're in now, or someplace along those lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. Someone taught me something very early in my career that I still hold on to because I see it working in every phase of my growth. Is they said, meet all the decision makers early. Like, listen to who's making a decision and meet them early, whether that's the director in your organization. Most people have few or a number of them. So meeting every single director who is a decision maker. And then this person also told me, meet the CEO immediately, like get on their calendar immediately and really understand their why. Like, why are they doing this work? Why is this work important to them? Because if you understand the direction and the strategy of the CEO or the leader of an organization, you are better positioned to excel a lot more quickly. And ultimately, those decision makers that I mentioned, the directors, the senior directors, like whoever the decision makers are, by meeting them early in your journey, you start to build relationships with them and they know who you are. And it's not a one-time conversation. It's like multiple, get on their calendar every quarter. You're trying to have as many conversations as you can so that they understand who you are, you understand what their goals are, and together as you're growing and you're learning and you're doing your own growth and development over time, those will be your sponsors down the line. And so that's the advice that I would tell people very early on is meet the CEO immediately and meet the decision makers as quickly as possible. And I would add to that actually. I've always been a lifelong learner. I'm committed to growth, whether it's like in career or not. I believe when you are learning, you're growing, and when you're not, you're dying. And so I've been committed to always just learning a new skill because at the end of whatever career you're in, no one can take away what's in your mind. They can only take away the platform that you have or the things that you have. But if you have those skill sets, you can replicate that anywhere. And so I would say create those relationships in the network, but also be committed to learning a new skill as often as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Dominic. Now, on the flip side, what is
Yeah.
one career mistake that you see often that can quietly derail long term leadership for an individual?
Hmm. Great question. What I've seen often, especially when I come in contact with people early in their leadership development or leadership growth period, is they often mistake being loud in spaces as leadership. And I believe that leadership is not the loudest voice, but it's the voice that is able to carry people forward. And so there's often a mistake of, if I am overly aggressive or I'm overly committed to like landing results and essentially like putting a fire under people's asses, for a better lack of words, the I've seen that be a pitfall every single time. And something that I coach around, which I've coined as quiet power, there's a important aspect of leadership, which is really listening to what people want, why they want it, and what are the problems that are not being solved. And I really encourage people to listen to those things, write them down, and really document the strategies that are not working for your company. And in that quiet power, you get to show up and create those results. It's not about who's the loudest in the room. It's not about who's the most commanding. To extent it is, but it's more about, can you answer the questions that people want answers to and create solutions around them? And sometimes that happens in the background. And when people start to see you as a resource and a solutions oriented person, you're more likely to elevate than the person who is the loudest and trying to take control of the room without the solutions behind them.
Excellent. I mean, definitely, I think people need to think more about those more subtle aspects of the working environment, because oftentimes people get caught up with who's the person making the most noise, who's the person who's throwing the most meetings on people's calendars. But it can often be, those people who step back a little bit and look at holistically how they can provide something and how they can have more so influence instead of it being just raw power, to put it in a sense or words.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, I think oftentimes what pushes people to lose themselves in the process of leadership is they often get tied to the title versus transformation. And leadership, for me at least, is about transforming the people's lives that you're working with, transforming the communities that you're working with. And it's not about the title. And I often see people chasing titles versus what value are you going to add. And so I would say that's an early pitfall, or a pitfall that people walk into, that they're looking for the job title, they're looking for the resume builder, and the various credentials that come with that, versus like, what value are you adding to people's lives? And I believe when you're focused there, your leadership journey goes further.
That pitfall, but I usually see that pitfall in women and like young people, not to be like like young men versus middle-aged men. That's interesting.
No, that's a great
Uh,
point, Reed. I definitely think that oftentimes when you're younger in your career, you're looking to make a splash, so to speak, so that you can hopefully, get your feet and kind of dive in there. What about people who have non-traditional careers, like, working at nonprofits, working in more marketing type of fields, where oftentimes it is more so about rank, and you've got people who've been there for 20 years. How do you provide some sort of impact, Dominic, there where there's already a hierarchy, and any big moves you might want to make will be seen as disruption as opposed to providing new ideas?
Damn it, leave the Democrats out of this. They're not going
I'm
to
not
change. We're
trying to
stuck.
bring in politics.
You're always bringing them back into the arguments. Look, we know what happened.
Look, bro, just you know what you got to do to be successful as a Democrat. You know.
But Dominic, sorry, those two aside.
That's funny. Yes, there are many careers where there are already hierarchies in place, and there are various companies where it's very clear that there's only a set number of leadership positions available, especially in the nonprofit space, where you're navigating the challenge of money often over the impact of your mission. And so sometimes there's trade-offs there that both leaders have to make, organizations have to make, and the employee has to make. And that's why I said earlier in the conversation that a thing that I would stress is really learning as many skills as you can, as often as you can, because these and some roles are only time bound. They're there for you to learn a certain amount of time. And when you've reached that ceiling, whatever it is, sometimes that means you either need to access the opportunity that's available to you in your company, whether that's a elevated leadership role, or if it's not available, that means that you get to position yourself to elevate in a different company with either a similar mission or if you choose to a different direction. But I believe that again, those skills based learning, the positioning yourself to be marketable in every single industry that you're working in is really important. And I think it's okay to leave an organization when you've exhausted the resources and you've added as much value as you can if there's no opportunity for you as a next step. I would all yeah, I often encourage individuals to continuously look around like what's available outside of your company because you're not tied to one company for the rest of your life. Yes, that was a thing in the past where people spent decades at one company, but there's so many available organizations out there that you can add value to with your skill set and make more money and make more impact. And I would say go for it if it's available to you.
You
There's one
mentioned
thing you said earlier that I have to make sure to clarify it too. I got this internal voice in my head. It's called nigga me. Anyway, you said meet the CEO. I know what you meant. Pretty sure everybody out here knew what you meant. Mainly, that's something that is very targeted towards smaller companies and businesses. But for those of you that don't know, well, it is harder to meet CEOs of a larger company if you work for one. But it is possible. But that's what he meant. It just bothered me. I don't know why it does. Like I had these conversations with folks that claim they want to be better, but they're like very argumentative and not trying to get the whole concept down or understand the full brevity of what you're saying. So that's all. That's all.
ah,
Yeah, and it's a great point. There are very large organizations out there, and it can be challenging. But there's always a workaround, right? There's the executive assistant that you can meet. They often know the schedule. They often know, like, when can you run into the CEO? Where are they going to be? I believe that if a CEO is not available to their employees, then really what are they doing, right? With the exception, there are some like very large organizations out there, but even still, there should be time for you to meet with your CEO. But the most important thing in that conversation is to understand the value and their why behind what they're doing. And there's a number of ways to get that answer with them still knowing who you are in the process.
so in like 2015, there was this big push towards DEI, and the numbers didn't bear out well for black males. How do you think they should run, get around those trends?
Say the last part one more time. How do I think they should get around what?
I don't want to say it. I'm going to say it the right way. The corporate agenda to make the workforce diverse, but when the numbers came back, or if we were to look up the numbers, it didn't seem like it benefited black males as much, as far as the DEI initiatives or push that happened since I would say about the George Floyd thing going on for it. Right, that's about it. How can you navigate those things? Because you are who you are, I guess, to some extent. Like, how would one navigate those? Kind of like that guy, what's his name? I don't know his name, but the new Red Lobster guy, that dude's 35 years old. Like, he runs
But
Red
you hate
Lobster.
him because he's African. Like you hate all the other
I didn't want to
Africans.
be the one to say
That's
it,
not
but
what I said.
We
That's not
all
what I
know
said.
it.
What I'm saying,
We got recorded history of you hating Africans, that especially the successful ones. That's why you targeted Obama.
that's not
He's a
what I talked
sleeper
about.
agent. You're a MAGA sleeper agent, man. We
Well,
figured you out.
whatever. What I'm saying is, generally speaking, how would one navigate even those initiatives, I guess? Because, like, you can't avoid who you are to some extent because you feel like there's no way to navigate that. Just being like a black male. Oh, I'm sorry, straight black male. To some extent, I guess that matters. I don't know. Because that would make
Yeah.
you less qualified for the DEI initiative.
I'll try to answer the question as best as I can. If I don't, please clarify. Personally, I don't coach to DEI, right? I don't coach leaders to look to the DEI openings or look to the the accessible options within that platform. I'm really coaching leaders to be the best that they can be. And I believe that when you're the best leader available, that your skills become undeniable, that your value becomes undeniable, and whether that's like in your exact company or in the next, when you get to a certain stature of leadership, people are going to talk about the impact that you're making. They're going to talk about the value that you're adding to the company, and whether that's like in a nonprofit, whether that's in government, whether that's in the corporate space, like leaders are talking across organizations because they're all trying to figure out similar problems. How do they elevate their company? How do they there's a number of different questions that organizations are trying to figure out. And so I don't coach the DEI aspect of it. I'm coaching you to be the best leader that you can so that your value is so undeniable that you're the best person for whatever job that you're looking for. And if that's not in your exact organization, then I'm coaching you to go to the next one and offer those skill sets to where other companies see your value and will pay you your worth.
Be the best person you can be. Kind of disregard all that stuff because you'll shine through regardless. you know.
I,
Um,
I honestly could wanted to say, like, personally, the multiple companies I've been in with that, I it's only one of them that I actually felt like I had no growth to get to the VP, and I never had CEO like aspirations, but like I think because it's once you see like the infrastructure of some of these companies, how many different senior VP, VP, executive VP, like there's a lot of titles before you get to that. I noticed when it comes to CEOs, there's a tier or a bullpen that they already have in a larger company versus I'm not gonna say smaller companies, it's something different, but the you kind of can pick up on that within the first year or so. And if you're not paying attention. If you have the possibility of being of that ilk. And then the next question you gotta ask yourself is, are you willing to put in the work? And it's not necessarily the tangible work, it's like the political work and smiling in the right faces, going to all these extra meetings and I'll cite this and that. Like I can honestly say, like with the company I'm at now, the one I was with before, there was a lot of growth to where I can get to. I've made, I know VP was a possibility. CEO, like I said, I don't have those ambitions, but you can tell when you're in a leadership role if there's potential for growth for you in that like tier. And if you can't, then you're not paying attention.
how much does their education matter then?
Uh, Me honestly, it is based off of a network. If you are a really competitive candidate and you don't have anybody pulling in your corner, education is going to be used against you depending on where you stood in that. They're not looking at like unless you're talking about marketing and stuff like that, and certain financial careers, where you went and what you got in the GPA ain't really gonna matter. But when it comes to like
You're older
everyday,
now, so
company,
for a young man,
what you say?
you're an older person versus someone who's younger.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, it's laid out there if you are not gonna be somebody that can be considered for that
Very
though.
true.
Like based off
Meaning
of
that
how
you have
they set up your career progression.
yeah,
Like your
no
career
experience.
progression outside of you is also based off of those that are in over you because there's in every company meetings to be had with directors on what is the next role for this person. If they want to pigeonhole you, they will pigeonhole you, and you'll feel pigeonholed. I've seen
That's
that
not what
with many.
they just get a new job, right? As you said. You don't have to be there.
To do is to get a new job, especially if when you have those career conversations, because that's one thing we didn't really jump on yet, but career conversations, you need to be having those often. And I'll leave, Dominic to kind of pick up at that point. But the question that you wanted to say, Reed, about DEI jobs, Black people as total only got 4% of those jobs, with 76% of them going directly to white women. But Dominic, how do we have those career conversations so that you can get considered, so that you don't end up like what White Collar Suge was saying, where essentially someone assesses that there's no room for growth here, but they're not going to come out and tell you there's no room for growth at the organization?
Yeah, and again, all of these are great questions. I'll just say I'm a big component of education, whether that's through the formal sense or just learning skills in a different direction. Like there's so many platforms where you get to learn, but it's really, for me, it's really important that we consistently educate ourselves, so that we have the skill set to be able to demand the the value of our worth, however you define that. In terms of career conversations, though, this is what I mentioned earlier. The value that is often underlooked is the networking across departments and even with your direct supervisor as well. So I spoke about sponsors early, and sponsors are, again, those individuals who are in your organization who are going to vouch for you, who are going to talk about you in a positive light, who are going to position you in rooms that you're not in and talk about the value that you're adding to the company, so that the decision makers are able to, one, know who you are, know your value, and then when positions start to come in mind, you're the first person that they think about because your sponsor in that organization has positioned you to be that person. But in terms of career conversation, what I often tell people is, again, you have to be very clear about what your career goal is, and that becomes your North Star. So let's say in 12 to 18 months, you are interested in a VP role in strategy. And you're very clear about that. The first thing I'm going to coach you around is, have you talked to your direct supervisor around your ambitions for that role? Because they're your first line of defense. Hopefully, you have a great supervisor. If not, there's workarounds around that. But the first person you should talk to is your supervisor, and get very clear on, these are your goals. This is the timeline that you're looking to progress within that role, if it makes sense. And the second thing that I encourage people to do is have a conversation around the gaps within your skill set. So your direct supervisor is the person who is probably going to know that best, because hopefully they're checking in with you on a weekly basis in some sort of supervisory conversation, and they're aware of your skill set, your visibility within the company, and where those gaps exist. Because if you're clear on your timeline, you're clear on the role, and your supervisor is clear on the skill set gaps, within that time frame, you both can work on that. Hopefully, your supervisor is in a position to then position you to be in a space where you either get to take on those new projects that increase that skill, or they get to connect you with someone across a department so that you're able to enhance those skill sets. But the major point here is that you have to have these conversations early, and you have to be very clear about where you want to go, because no one's going to tell you what position you're qualified for. You have to be the person to clearly say, this is what I want and this is where I want to go. And I often see people making that mistake of just waiting. They're waiting for the opening, they're waiting to be seen, they're waiting for someone to acknowledge them versus creating the position for themselves.
No question. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I'm the guy that came in late. This is actually phenomenal information. But my question that I have is, what happens if um, you are very ambitious, you want to move up in the company, but the company just has a whole bunch of obstacles in front of you, your peers, your immediate supervisor, and it kind of goes up a little bit of the chain. How do you work around that? Because most jobs that I find that people go into, they're actually more of a predatory job opportunity. Whereas in they go in there and basically the job is there to use you until you're burnt out, and then they just find the next person. But let's say again you're ambitious and you want to move up, you work around that situation.
Yeah, part of that is mindset. Part of that is really understanding something I coach around is understanding your own leadership DNA. So those are things like your values. What are the things that you're willing to stand on? What are the things that you're not willing to compromise in your leadership journey because you hold a certain set of values as an individual, but also as a leader, and getting very clear on that. There's also the style of leadership that I coach around. Like, who do you get to be authentically in every single space that you walk into? And there's some parameters within that to be able to elevate within a leadership position, but essentially you should be comfortable in whatever workspace you're in, being who you are authentically, because I believe that that's your edge in leadership, so that you don't get lost in that trajectory forward. And then I often coach people around, like, what is your story? Someone said early on the podcast that like, what if you don't relate to the person who's in that leadership seat? That's why it's so important for you to really get clear on what is your story, because other people are looking for that story to elevate alongside of you. And that's what's going to be the thing that galvanizes and creates the community around you within your workspace that is going to elevate you. And so when you get really clear on what your leadership DNA is, you're navigating that space very clearly, whether people are trying to give you every single project available to mankind until you burn out, or they're just like layering you with thing after thing. You get to be very clear on what is your current role, what are your responsibilities, and what can you say no to? And that's embedded in how you brand yourself as a leader, because we're not meant to go to work to die. We're not meant to burn out at work. We're there to add value and create contribution to the world. And if you're not in a job like that where you find yourself getting inspired every day to be there, then maybe that's not the role for you, and you get to look somewhere else because you have that option. We all have options available to us. We just have to figure out where do we look and then how do we do it. But no one's really forcing anybody to be anywhere where they don't want to be. Yes, there's life, and yes, we have bills, and we get to be strategic around how we make that exit. But all of us have options in this country, especially. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And actually, I really do want to appreciate that what you said. There are options. You just have to plan your financial exit. Because I'm one that actually have done where I realized that a lot of opportunities weren't for me, and kept running into these roadblocks. I had to assess. Wait a second, this is not working for me. What do I need to do, and what do I need to change? So then I just decided, okay, this is what I need to change, and I changed it. But it is still not very easy at all, because what I aspire to be is still, people just don't have that vision that you do. And that's what I also come to find out. Like, how would you actually kind of recommend like moving forward in your vision, but other people don't share your vision?
Yeah, and I've certainly been in those spaces as well, right? Where we're almost surviving around the people around us versus living in our strategy forward within that vision. And what I often talk about is the mask versus the mirror. So sometimes we're walking in a space where we're very clear when we look in the mirror who we are, what our vision is. You're talking to yourself around like what's next for you. But then when you get into the workspace that's not aligned with who you are, what your values are, what your leadership DNA is, then often I find, especially the black men, putting on a mask and just going to work and calling it a day. And at the end of the day, you take off that mask and you go and you be who you really are. But I believe that there's a way to mold both of those things together, fully remove the mask and only operate in the mirror. And what I call that is, or not rather what I call it, but what I encourage people to do is find the people within your organization who are going to be a stand for your vision. And that's why networking, having those conversations are so important, because you get to learn what people value and figure out where the alignment is so that you all could strategize on how to make whatever that vision is that you're looking to create happen if it aligns with your organization's vision, because that's very important. You can't create a new vision inside of an organization that already has an existing one. But you do get to elevate it if it's aligned. If it's not aligned, then you get to go out and create it. We talked about non-traditional roles. There's many avenues to create the visions that you want, right? Whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's partnering with another organization, whether that's multiple people coming together to create something that hasn't been created before. There's a number of different options out there. You just have to get very clear on like where do you want to go, and if that's within your company, I would say find the people who are aligned in your values and create from that place versus focusing on the individuals who are not aligned.
That is an excellent answer.
Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
go ahead.
Yeah, that really is, and I do appreciate it. I got one more question when it comes to tagging on to this, and it's probably kind of like a. I'm just asking this for our viewers or our listeners. So let's say you're in a company, you know that it's not the vision for you. They don't have the vision for you. They're not there for obtaining your vision. How do you go about searching for a company that is aligned with your vision?
First place that I would start is I would just start with your network. Depending on your access, two things that I do when I'm working with clients is one, I help them tap into their own network. There's often people who we think can help us, and then there's the other people who we're connected to who we haven't considered, but they may be connected to a person that is going to give you an entry point into a door that you didn't know was available. And so the first thing I say is identify your goal and actually put it out there with your network. People often get scared of if I put it out there, it's not going to happen. If I put it out there, somebody's going to sabotage it. But I believe when you put it out into the universe, that it's going to come back to you tenfold. But it won't come there or won't come back if you're not vocalizing that. And so I encourage people to start with a network. The second thing that I help people around is really tapping into a hidden network of opportunities. So there's the job boards, there's the LinkedIn's, there's the Indeeds, right, which everyone is applying for a job when you or a career if you're in that space. You're typically a hiring manager is looking at 1,000 resumes a week if they have the time. If not, they're literally looking at a few sentences of that resume within 30 seconds, and they're trying to filter through who is the best person, or they're using AI. And so that's the network that's available to everyone. And then there's the hidden job market, the hidden network that we get to tap into, right? Which there are communities out there who are looking to elevate others, who are looking to elevate individuals with similar vision, and you get to also tap into that. So it's a part of my coaching program that I connect people with the right individuals, whether that's a recruiter, whether that's a firm that is specifically outsourcing for specific roles. There's a number of different opportunities that you could explore, but I would say that the first step is your internal network.
Man, thank you so much for that. Like your answers are like, flat out amazing, and I'm hoping that our younger listeners actually do they take to this, because as soon as you learn these lessons in life, the better it is for your outcome, and you can be who you want to be earlier on in life. So like you have the rest of your life to enjoy your life.
Especially the black ones to me, because I feel like our biggest weakness is not even the misconception of what a network is, not looking at their counterparts of different backgrounds and seeing how they're all like always engaging with each other, or at least they interact with each other or use each other. Like it's our biggest flaw, as we say in many different categories. But it's the power of a network is legitimately like limitless. People don't understand that.
Yeah, and that's actually why I'm such a large proponent of education. Whether that's the traditional route or non-traditional route, there's so many ways to learn. But often in the education space, what I've experienced is that you're meeting up with a group of people, typically in a class or some type of community gathering to learn. And you're meeting people who have a like-minded vision automatically. They're interested in learning the skill that you're also interested in. And so depending on what type of education, whether it's if you're very early on high school, if it's college, if it's whatever the education space is, you're around a group of people who have similar goals, similar mindset, and who have similar ambitions already. So that's automatically a community that you could tap into. If it's earlier on in that learning experience, like I said, high school, maybe you have a couple of years before those individuals get into the manager's roles, the director's role, the senior director's roles. But if you've done the work to create the connection, when it's time, you could reach out to those people because they'll be working at another organization or another network or another environment where they may have a resource to refer you to. And that's why I think kindness goes a long way. Positive relationships go a long way. And whether you're like close friends or not, just sustaining that relationship is so important because people want to help each other at the end of the day. That's been my experience in life. And the more we could lean into asking for what we want, the better our outcomes are.
Yeah, Reed, be a decent person.
I don't know why you got to take it to Reed, but no, most definitely. You know, we really do appreciate you coming on the podcast and giving us some additional information. Now, this is the section where we'd like you to plug, whatever website, whatever other stuff, and you can always provide anything additional via the email chat that me and you have been having. But please tell the people where they can find you and where they can get some of this coaching, because we all know that we get better when we're going with people. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Totally agree, and I appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Dominic George. The best place to directly interact with me is on LinkedIn. My handle there is Dominic C. George, and I'm the person responding. I'm the person going back and forth with you. I also have my own podcast called Vision Leadership for Life, where I help middle management leaders navigate that space towards senior leadership. And if you're a reader and you just like to get quick notes in advance. I also have two different places. I have a newsletter also called Vision Leadership for Life, where I offer those same quick skill sets, and it's on a weekly basis where I offer tools on how do you navigate the spaces that you're in. And I also have an upcoming book that is going to be released within the next couple of weeks called The Authentic Edge, Leading Without Losing Yourself. And it's a guide for Black men looking to navigate middle management leadership into senior level leadership. And you can find that on Amazon.
Excellent. Well, we really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'll definitely check out that book because I'm always looking for new things to pick up when it comes to leadership, because that's the only way that you learn is to read. But thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to another episode of Everyday Black Man Podcast, podcast on authentic Black male thoughts. We had our special guest, Dominic C. George. Find him on LinkedIn. We had myself, Riker. We had Reed. We had Armstead. We had Stylish. We had the writer who asked a bunch of questions late in the final half. We had White Collar Shug, Sham, and appreciate everybody. Find us on Twitter, EVYD Black Men, Instagram, Everyday Black Men, Everyday Black Men Facebook page. We also have a Patreon, EBMP. All episodes debut there first, including some exclusive ones there and some drawings. And last but not least, our website is www.everydayblackmen.com. Peace.